Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Eco-féminism. Today I've got a very interesting guest. He's young, motivated, he's intellectual and politician. His name is Lahcen. Sid, welcome to Eco-féminism.
Thank you, Manel. I'm pleased to be here as guest. I'm highly honored.
Me too. I'm really pleased to have an interview with you today. It would be a very fruitful and enriching conversation on youth, social mobility and integration in Europe. So let's start with a small biography on Sid. Who is Sid Lahcen?
Well, as you say, I'm highly motivated, but not only that. Well, maybe you want to know what I did. I've been city councillor for the VVD in my hometown. I've done that from 2010 to 2018. I've been promoted to doctor last year. I also taught in university, where I taught philosophy of management sciences and philosophy of history. And nowadays I'm mostly writing books. And in the books I address many topics that also concern you, such as radicalism, but also the issues that the left and the right of today have to deal with.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. So let us start with your experience as a politician, because you've been a city councillor from 2008 to 2018. So it's a long experience.
Well, I have to say that I was very active as assistant. From 2008 to 2010, so it was fractieassistent. But from 2010 to 2018, I was actually a city councillor.
Okay, perfect. But how can you speak about your experience to young people who are motivated to be engaged in politics, and what do you think about youth engagement in politics nowadays?
Oh, you're talking about engagement in politics. Well, it's actually, as I written in my book, Levenslust en doodsdrift, which basically means the thirst for life, but also the fatality of it, so also our attraction to death at the same time, which of course relates to martyrdom and religious terrorism and so on. And it's very closely related, because there was a famous politician of the Netherlands called Job Cohen, also mayor of Amsterdam, spokesperson for the Labour Party, and he gave a presentation on radicalism in The Hague. And I was invited as a city councillor to be there to discuss radicalism and youth. And he basically talked about giving hope to people and said that we have
hope legacy.
Yeah, hope for young people, and also to unite people by giving internships and attracting them to come into the political arena, to become active as young politicians and so on. But I was, of course, a realist, because people say, oh, you're so right or so left or whatever. No, I'm a realist. And so I said to him, okay, but I have been a city councillor now for 8 years, and I know that if you truly want to change something as a young person, well, it's not going to happen by becoming politically active, because you know as well as I do, first you have to do campaigns so that other people can be elected, and then maybe if you fall good with your leadership of your party, then maybe you get into an electable position, and then of course there's all the lobby that you need to do, and deeply entrenched interest groups. And so as a young people, and you sign up as a rookie and you're ambitious to change things, well, maybe you can change a few small things for your community, but really important issues such as the pay that you get for a starting job. Well, you're not going to change that by joining politics now, but maybe you can change it in 10 years. But if you want to give people hope to change things in the here and now and to change things in their own life, I said, well, all that you're going to get is that people learn how deeply entrenched these interests are, how difficult it is to put things in motion. We're having meetings and gathering, discussions and big stacks of notes and no tools and so on, but nothing is going to change. You need endless networking, endless lobbying to actually change something. So, but these people, if they really want to set an item on the agenda, for them it's more effective just to blow up a bomb. Just to have a bomb will give much more attention to your topic than to go into politics. If you really want to achieve,
just let me understand your approach. Is it speaking about you want to speak about young people who are radicalized and they don't really want to be included into politics because they find themselves marginalized?
Exactly. Yeah, you as a young person, this important guy comes and says young people have to join the party. But what's going to happen next is that they do join up. They found out that how difficult it is to actually change anything. They're just going to be discouraged. Yeah, they're going to be disillusioned by the political process. And at best, there are some internships for people who are already active. You're going to reach the people with this, basically the top of the best. The people who are already active for student programs, the people who will find their way to these kinds of events, and you're not going to reach the bottom of the bottom who are also vulnerable to being radicalized. Those are not the ones that you're going to reach with them. And they're going to come to the municipality building, going to shake hands with the mayor, going to shake hands with the important politicians, make photos, put these photos on Facebook, so that the signal to the world is we're including young people, we're working with young people, but the netto result is that these young people will still have zero influence whatsoever on things like, hey, how's with your pensions? Oh, you're just graduated, but you don't have the network. Now what? You have to pay off your college loans, and you still don't have the network to find work at your level of education. So these are issues that they're not going to be able to change if they become politically active. They will need to network for years and years.
Okay, so what's the solution actually? And maybe the problem is that we are living in a very active world, in the world of media, in the world of advertising, in the world of fake news. So what's the solution actually for these young people to, to pursue their dreams, to be successful, to get a job, to be influential actually?
No, that's more and more difficult. The solution is actually to do a bottom-up sort of grassroots revolution, in the sense that we find out that our system, it's so closed off for, well, as we discussed a little bit before here, we talked about universities, and you find out that if you truly are an independent thinker, well, you find out that most of the doors will just be locked for you. If you don't have specific criteria to go through these gender, or minority or whatever, you can maybe make it through those doors with specific criteria backing you up to fill certain quotas. But if you're truly an independent individual thinker, well, people will be afraid of you, and they don't want to make you strong, and the institutions will work against you. I discovered this in person when I was teaching in university. And there is no solution to this. If you seek the solution within the system, I think you have to educate yourself, build things up outside of the system. Yeah, you have to sort of create a new pillar of society with these kinds of people to create opportunities for themselves.
Okay, so you invite young people not to be followers and to be independent and to seek their own information and to follow their own path without being influenced by the system, actually.
Yeah, exactly, because the system will create people who reinforce the interests of the system. As we discussed before, this education, well, yeah, but the top politicians, they have enough money, they have enough connections for private teachers, they have connections to the best universities where they can always send their children. So the education system is not their problems because they have the channels to escape it. And so the bottom classes of society also have to find channels to escape it. You have to educate yourself and start downloading information from YouTube maybe to learn arts and craft, to learn how to create beautiful, constructive things. So basically, yeah, we have to take the means of production into our own hands. I mean, we're talking about radicalism for a little bit. If you truly want to fight radicalism, what you need is a middle class. So for integration, the best way to integrate in society is the middle classes. So what you're going to get is if the middle class shrinks because of all sorts of development related to new technologies, but also to global competition, opening the markets, opening the borders, migration, well, all these factors together shrink the middle class. Well, it becomes harder to integrate in society if the middle class shrinks. And so people are going to search for other ways to have a positive self-impression. Either it's going to be selfies, narcissism in social media, hunting for likes on social media, or it's going to be religious radicalism, martyrdom, fighting a holy war. Those ideas also appeal to people. So that's the consequence that you're going to get. Yeah.
Okay, so you're coming from the Netherlands, and we spoke about radicalism and the problem of extremism in the Netherlands, but we also spoke about certain the emergence of certain political parties like the Party Islam here in Belgium, and you've got the equivalent of the Party Islam in the Netherlands. What is the what are the consequences of this kind of emergence of these particular parties, actually, because we already know that we don't really like to a religion to be involved in politics in a democracy, in a democratic society.
If you are secularist,
yes. If you are secular. So what is the consequences, what are the consequences, and what is the impact of the emergence of that party?
Yeah, well, first, before we talk about the impact of it, I would also like to talk about the cause of it. And the cause of it is, of course, related to demography. So we can simply see by the way that the population buildup of Western European countries changes, that these parties will start to appear and they will grow and they will become more popular, also related to fertility situations that we have. But what will the direct impact of this be? I think it will shake up the left, because now the left is forced to face what they have created and what they have tolerated to come into being. Now they have to face it. So in the Netherlands we have an equivalent party, which is actually a split off of the PvdA, which is the left Labour Party. And they have created this in a way. So now I would say that it forces the left, in essence, to abandon their, migration identitarian agenda, because they are going to have to face that even if they bring in new voters, it's not going to be their voters anymore. So the migrants that they bring in, many of them will go directly into the established enclaves that we have here in Belgium and the Netherlands, but and this will not gain them any votes. And that's what I think. So it will force them, the left, to abandon the migration identitarian issues and focus much more on social economic issues. That's what I think. Also, it's not yet quite clear to them yet. In the Netherlands, we have a Green Party with a leader led by Jesse Klaver, basically a Trudeau clone that we have in the Netherlands. And he had a very big victory in the elections. He was not the biggest, but compared to what he had before, he was really a significant gains of parliamentary seats. And he was also invited to take part in the discussions to form a new government. And he dropped out at the last moment, saying that he did not want to sign an agreement on migration. And that's quite strange, because he will need to face that he has to be tough on migration. Well, he has to sign the migration bill, because the new migrants that will come from, mainly from Africa and the Middle East, they're not going to vote GroenLinks. They're not going to vote for far-left environmental parties. That's not what they're going to vote for. So he should have just realized that and say, okay, I will sign the migration agreement, but I want solar panels, renewable energy, typical environmental issues. The people vote green, left, because they want our environmental technology, environmental measures, solar panels, and those kind of things. But he did not have the political vision to even realize that, and so he just dropped out of the government discussions.
Okay, we already know that the Netherlands is one of the very evolved countries in terms of climate change. Fighting against climate change and renewable energy. So do you think that the rise of these parties like Green parties is one of the causes of this success in terms of fighting against climate change, or is it, for instance, just a wave because we have already this wave of fighting?
No, it's just because of the Trudeau impression, because this Green Left Party, it has existed for many years, but he's young and charismatic, and he has a Trudeau vibe about him, so people also mainly voted just for his positive image, more so than the whole climate discussion. What I think, if you look at the impact of climate, let's compare to now the rise of artificial intelligence. So if you look at my prediction is that 10, 15 years from now on, no one will be talking about climate, just like acid rain or sour rain. No one is talking about acid rains or sour rains anymore. It was a big hype in the 90s, but people will be talking about artificial intelligence, because the way that artificial intelligence impacts on industrial production and the labor class, the productive classes, the impact is so gigantic that the left will have to face this issue if it wants to continue to exist as a party for the common people. And it will also force them to change their priorities.
Okay, so let's move to integration, because we have spoken about youth and migration and all that stuff, and social mobility, but most of all, integration is one of the topics that is very, very particular, and it is one of the topics that it needs to be, studied by the parties, especially the different parties and the parties who are looking for migrants votes or people of migrants origin vote. So, what is integration to you, and what is integration to, the definition from the perspective you have written the book Occident and Identity. So from the perspective of an identity agenda, so what is integration?
Well, first I would like to point out that the left criticism nowadays is saying the debate is all about identity nowadays, and that serves a purely right-wing agenda. So as leftists...
So it's right-wing agenda, it's not left.
That's the criticism of leftists nowadays, because leftists are now saying, well, you're debating on identity, but this is purely a right-wing agenda, and so we should not follow this discussion. That's what the left is saying, but that's complete nonsense, because if you actually look at my work, that I have always included social analysis and social economic issues in my work. They're everywhere. I'm talking about the problems with pensions for young people. I'm talking about the problem that you have to follow internship upon internship. Your parents.
This is the problem of millennials, actually. You have so many degrees, you're academic, you can speak so many languages, but you still don't have a job. And this is the problem of millennials nowadays, everywhere in the world, not really in Europe or in Africa or in the US. So it's a very international problem.
So now we're not yet talking about integration, but we're talking for a little bit about social mobility, because I think that social mobility is a key factor also for integration, because you can give that's people who go to ISIS. Often they even have academic degrees in fields of chemistry and so on. We have to really focus what influences someone to radicalize. Is it social economic backgrounds or just purely religious ideology? We have to really look into that. But for now, the most important thing to start with is social mobility. We also spoke when we were in Warsaw in the LIMEC conference. What I really stood out for me in the LIMEC conference, where you have ambitious, young, upwardly mobile, cosmopolitan Europeans all together discussing economic and innovation and so on. And what were they all talking about? So we're talking about people, let's say, 27, 28 years old on average. Everyone talking about, I want the right to work anywhere. I want open borders. I want the freedom to go anywhere without any inhibitions.
Yeah, but as a liberal, it's normal to think about it.
But what I completely missed were essential questions there, as in, okay, so I want to start up a family. How do I go about to have the security, the economic security that I need to start up a family? Because that's what, when you're approaching the age of 30, that's a question that I as a young person would think about. How do you feel I'm going to start a family, but I need job security for that. I need economic stability. I work for half a year in Copenhagen. I'm working now in London for half a year. How are you ever going to find the economic stability or the social stability or the social cohesion to start up families like that? And people were only talking about the liberty to go anywhere and follow random internships at multinationals and so on. But how is you can stack up internship upon internship, but at the end of the day, you still don't have a steady income. Huh? So I didn't hear any questions about these matters, where I think this will define the fate of our generation, because it will define whether or not you will have the opportunities to start families. And if you can't start families, well, that's also going to make the demography even weaker, and people will try to solve it with even more migration, and that will lead to even more problems in the labor market and so on. And there's just not a coherent vision present on these matters.
Okay, so you think that young people are not really focusing on the future, they are just focusing on the present and having internship and having experience, but not on the future of the country or the future
and
of the
I can
European
see
continent.
how this happens, Manel. I can see how this happens, because it's just not rewarding to think of the future, because as we said, everything is now so flexible. Well, do we even know where we will be in a year, or where we will live, or where we will study, or where we will work? We don't know. So you're actually also invited to join this youth culture, just being young, being healthy, being beautiful, being basically good in the sexual market, having lots of partners, having lots of options. We're encouraged to live this lifestyle, utterly cosmopolitan and hedonistic, but without any solidity or social cohesion, or even a clear uniting goal or vision towards the future. And this is what I also see in my experience as a city councillor. I see this now. There's people way in their 70s being re-elected in the city council. And I would say, going back to the generation of 68 and so on, the 68 revolution, the Soissons-Huitard and so. Previously, the idea was that there was a sort of transcended heritage. Your parents built it up and they handed it over to you, and you worked yourself into this heritage, you made it your own, and then you prepared the way for another to take your place, to pass on the skills and the knowledge to a younger generation. And this was a sort of heritage that transcended different generations, and it created a continuity and stability, but that's completely gone now. So the baby boomer generation is pretty much the idea, me, myself, and I am now free from all constraints, I am now free from all traditions and all ties to the past and all involuntary bonds. I have now liberated myself from them. I'm now a self-driving, self-governing, completely autonomous individual. Yeah, but this also creates the mentality of, well, after me, nothing after me. And these are people who want to keep all the good jobs, like being a teacher in a university, motivated students, interesting lessons, and so you can do it until a very late age. If you're on the floor and you're doing carpentry, or you're doing bricklaying, well, you probably don't want to do it into your 70s. So all the nice jobs, all the good jobs, teaching at universities, political positions, they want to do it until the grave, because they don't have any anchor in belief in transcendent values anymore, because that's been sacrificed by previous generations. So they don't believe in building something up and passing it down to the next generation. They don't. It's hedonistic. And so the young generation sees this and they say, well, hey, I'm not going to have pension, I'm not going to have job stability, so at least give me my freedom to live as a cosmopolitan and let me enjoy my hedonistic lifestyle in the here and now, because, well, I inherit the table, but there's really not that much on the table. Well, you can see that in previous generations made a lot of debts. And now we inherit the debts of the previous generation, but we also have an aging society, a grey society, where we really don't have, we don't have the manpower to even pay off all the debts made by previous generations. So we just shut our minds and hope not to think about it.
Okay, so this is your point of view in terms of integration in Europe and about the millennial generation, actually. But let us go back to the...
well, the point of migrant communities is that actually social ties are actually very strong in migrant communities. So the cosmopolitan hedonism...
You're speaking about the Netherlands, actually.
Yeah.
Or in Europe?
Yeah, well, Islamic migrant communities in general actually have very strong social ties. Where people are still very connected through their religion, through their family, through the bonds of the family. And so this is a very strong demography in a way. So we have high fertility rates, people support each other when there are children, and in a way it's a very positive example also to the rest of the Netherlands. And they have, well, because of their religious views, they have become somewhat immune also to this hedonistic narcissism, and now it collapses, and now it collides with the rest of society. And it's interesting, as we discussed a little bit before, what's the left gonna do? What's the left gonna do in terms of they have to find a new electorate? So if you look at the left, try to find a new electorate in this, but now you see this electorate, it has its own political parties, because they realize that all these feminist progressives, did they find the time and the place to build families? No, they often don't. So the migrants already realize that the progressive left doesn't really have a future, and they're ready now. They feel the confidence, they feel the strength of their religious views to start building their own political parties. And so far the mainstream doesn't really have an answer to this, because they refuse to address the question of demography.
Yeah, but this is just a minority. We are not going to discuss in terms of, because not all the migrant community or people of migrant community are interested by these views, by these parties. Probably they are interested also by the left parties or green parties.
True, but this is a problem. If you move into a country where you don't know anyone, you are probably going to end up with the people who at least speak your language. So that's why new people who come go also often into the communities where people already live, who share their religion, share their traditions, share their language, and then they become influenced by it. So let's say that you're a progressive woman and you don't want to wear a headscarf, you don't want to wear a hijab, maybe even drink alcohol, and that's okay if you're from a secular country, but you end up in a community with people with strong social control, as I talked about, this social cohesion. Of course, it comes at the price of also being pressured. So they will be pressured, well, I want to remain in good faith with my community, I want to remain in good standing with my community, so I'm going to revert step by step into more conservative views. That's the problem. If you have a few migrants, you can spread them out across the native population, and they will just be adopted in the community, and they will evolve, and they will be perfectly integrated. But if you put them all in the same spot, well, then they become an autonomous bubble.
So you're speaking about ghettos. Actually,
enclaves.
Yeah. So this is the problem. So what's the role of education in terms of fighting against ghettos and
Yeah, very difficult. Good friends of mine, teachers at the MBO. I don't know the equivalent to translate that to Belgian audience, but it's in essence, people have even given up the pretense that many come there to learn. So you essentially, you mop up all those who didn't make it into higher education. Still forced by law to study a bit, to learn a bit of citizenship and so on. But unfortunately, many people either don't have the background, have cultural issues, well, some also have other issues, and sadly, even many people with good intentions really want to learn, find themselves in an environment where it's pretty much chaotic, not enough time per student to really learn, and so it's nowadays just a facade of learning, having going to these institutions. But as my friends say, well, they're the teachers, and they say, well, I pretend to teach, and they pretend as if they're interested. So yeah, the education system has already rolled so far down a road, unfortunately, that any teacher who comes in there and really tries to install meritocracy finds himself forced by apathy, and also the apathy of the system itself. So it's what I think is people have to educate themselves, really. As we talked about also universities, if you come into the university and you don't have the right political opinion, you don't have the right political trademark, well, people are just going to block you. They're going to do it formally or informally, but they will find ways to block you inside the university. So also here in Belgium, I know examples of this in the ULB. It's quite sad, really, and so on. People with a more realistic perception of reality, they will have to find ways to educate themselves outside of the system, to gain knowledge outside of the system. I think we are moving towards a more Renaissance era. And by that I mean that if you look at medieval ages...
Yeah, Renaissance.
And yeah, in the medieval ages people thought what they're being taught here, just religion, just theology, just the Bible, that's not what I need to learn anymore. I need to learn different things, such as eloquence, to speak in a court of law, or to read ancient texts, or to convince people as a speaker, to have public skills. And so you got the humanists. They learned a lot about ancient traditions. They knew Plato and Virgil, knew them equally well as the scholars of the theology at the time. But they found their own ways outside of the scholarly system set up by the church. And that's the position that we have today. Us realists, we have to unite outside of the system, because the system is not going to give us a fair chance. We have to expand our knowledge outside of the system, and to find each other outside of the system, and to set up a new column.
Okay. Thank you, Sid. We come to the end of this beautiful conversation. At the end, I always ask my guests to give an advice or quotation or anything that is inspiring to young people watching here in Belgium. So what is the advice that you give to young people in order to pursue their dreams, or to be successful, or in politics, or in business, or whatsoever? Or maybe for their life. I mean, as you said, searching on internet, trying to get experience and knowledge from internet, from YouTube, from every channel that is available right now, and that is.
Well, as I said, there is a lot of despair, and if you see that there is despair, then you are a realist. And the only way we can really answer that is by creating beauty, creating beautiful things to inspire people. And you can do that just by learning things like arts and crafts. Well, maybe you don't have the gift to become a professor in gender studies or some other politically correct study, but maybe you can find dignity in labor, just to learn beautiful things, to create furniture, for instance, or to create whatever. Educate yourself about chemistry, about construction, about woodwork, and all sorts of craftsmanship. You can quite easily learn them nowadays from the internet, so that people can also create beautiful things and create things to sustain in their livelihood outside of just climbing the social ladders by sucking up to corporate types. No, just create it for yourself. Create it from yourself by bottom-up production.
Okay, thank you very much, Sid. Wish you good luck with your research, and looking forward for the English translation of Occident and Identity.
Thank you very much, Manel. It was a great pleasure to be here.
The pleasure is mine. Ladies and gentlemen, we come to the end of this conversation. I hope you enjoyed it, and see you next week. Thank you.